Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Chapter 3. Joe Green's Lesson. When we returned to Birtwick Park, we heard that John was to have a new helper. His name was Joe Green, and he was 14 years old.
"Are you sure you don't need someone who is older than this?"
asked Squire Gordon.
"No, sir," said John. "Joe is small, but he wants to learn, and he is a hard worker. I was the same age when I started here. I had no family, but you looked after me as well as any parent. Now I live here with a good job and a good living. It is only right that I do the same to this new boy, Joe Green."
In the next few weeks, Joe learned to sweep the floor, bring in the food, and wash the carriages. He was too small to brush Ginger or me, so he practiced on Merrylegs. He was a happy boy who was always singing. However, it was not always a happy time. One event happened that stopped Joe singing for some time. John woke me up when it was still dark one morning. Almost before I could open my eyes, he was riding me past the house.
"Ride as fast as you can,"
called Squire Gordon, who was standing by the door with a lantern in his hand.
"Take this note to Dr. White. My wife is very ill. When you find the doctor, Black Beauty can rest at the inn." "Yes, sir," cried John, and he rode me as quickly as he could through the village and out along the river. We went through another village, through a dark wood, up and down hills, until at last we came to the town. Everything was quiet and everyone was sleeping. Finally, we arrived at Dr. White's house. John knocked loudly on the doctor's door. "Mrs. Gordon is very ill. You must come now," said John, passing the doctor the note. "I will come at once, but I have a problem. My son has taken my horse, and I do not have another. Can I ride yours? He's very hot because he has run all the way here, but I think it's the only way to save Mrs. Gordon. I'll stay here and you can ride Black Beauty." It is hard for me to describe the journey back. The doctor was heavier than John and not such a good rider. I had almost no energy when we finally arrived back at Birtwick Park. The doctor ran into the house, and young Joe took me inside. All my hair was wet, and I felt so hot. Poor Joe was young, and he did not know what to do. A horse who has just run a long way needs to stay warm and drink warm water. It is a dangerous time for the horse, so someone should stay and watch him too. Joe did not do this. He did not put a warm blanket on me because I was hot, and then he gave me cold water to drink before he went away and left me alone in the stable. I began to feel very cold. All my body ached. I lay down and tried to sleep. When I woke up, John was at my side. It was difficult for me to breathe. He covered me with blankets and gave me some hot water. He then stayed with me night and day. Squire Gordon also came to see me. "Poor Black Beauty, you saved my wife's life, and now you are as ill as she was." Although I was ill, I was happy to hear that she was well again. Young Joe Green was very unhappy. He knew that I was ill because he did the wrong things that night. Luckily, I became well again in a few days, but I knew that John was angry with Joe. A few weeks later, Joe took me out to take a message to a neighbour. On the way home, we passed a carriage that was full of heavy metal bars. It was taking them to a nearby factory. The wheels of the carriage could not move because the carriage was so heavy and there was thick mud on the road. 2 horses were trying to pull the carriage, but they could not. The driver was hitting them hard with a whip. "Stop, please," said Joe. "The wheels will not move in this mud." "Be quiet," said the driver rudely. "I can help you take some of the metal from the carriage, then it will move," said Joe. "Go away," said the driver. "I know what I'm doing." He continued to hit the horses. Joe quickly rode me to the factory and found the manager. Joe told him what the man was doing. "Thank you, Joe," said the manager. "I'll deal with the man. Will you tell the police what you saw?" "Yes, I will," said Joe. The manager went to find the carriage with the metal, and Joe went home. He told John what happened. "You did the right thing," said John. We heard later that the police asked Joe about what he had seen. Joe explained very well, and when the police saw the poor horses, they sent the driver to prison for 2 or 3 months. It was wonderful to see the change that came over Joe. He learned from his mistakes to become a very good worker. John was now very pleased with him. "You look taller than you did last week," said John. Soon Joe was singing happily again every day. Unfortunately, Mrs. Gordon became ill again in the years that followed. The doctor said that she should live in a warmer climate. We heard that Squire and Mrs. Gordon were going to leave England. Everybody was very sad. All Squire Gordon's horses were sold to new owners. Ginger and I were the last horses to leave Birtwick Park, and one morning we took Squire Gordon and his wife to the railway station. We never saw them again. Ginger and I found out that we were going to live at Earlshall Park, the home of a rich earl called Smythe. John took us there the next day and told the new helper, a man called York, that we were the best horses they could have. Then John left too. I felt very sad to see him go. I did not realise that my new home with Earl and Lady Smythe would bring new difficulties for Ginger and me.